Hi, I'm Zoe, and today I'd like to show you an example of a relatively sensible hi-hat patch on a modular synthesizer, such as this Doepfer A-100 behind me. So here's an example of a drum part. We've got a close hi-hat here and an open hi-hat here, and we've got some other drum parts here, the kick and the bass. So first of all, we're going to select all of the closed hi-hats at the same time by right-clicking on this note here. And we're going to select all of the open hi-hats as well by right-clicking with Shift on this part here. And then you right-click and select legato, and all of the closed hats and open hats are now mutually exclusive with each other, while all the other parts are unaffected and they don't affect this. Next thing to do is to right-click and explode the take. Right, we want to explode the MIDI by note row pitch, which splits up all of the drums onto a separate part. And then for the open hi-hat, we want to send it to a different MIDI channel to the closed hi-hat. We'll just mute the kick and snare. The closed hi-hat is now MIDI channel 1, the open hi-hat's on MIDI channel 2, and we can send both at the same time, which will be important because I like to change the sounds dynamically as the song's playing. And by playing both parts at once, I can do live dynamic changes to the timbre, and it affects both of them simultaneously. Once you've split up the drum channels, I like to make them proper first level channels in their own right, so they're not grouped under anything else. Partly it's just neater that way, I think, but also you don't want the main group sending the same MIDI notes at the same time as these ones, because that will just confuse it with sending the same note-ons and note-offs at the same time. It's also a good idea to make the notes slightly shorter so that they don't quite overlap with each other, so you can really get quite detailed in there, and then just take a teeny tiny bit off the edge, just so that they don't quite overlap. And then you're ready to record. So these hi-hat parts outputting to channels A and B on the MIDI to CV converter, coming in on the first and second gate or trigger. So the first trigger is here. No, we're not going to use the triggers, we're going to use the gates. So the first gate is here, and we're going to send this gate to this ADSR envelope generator, which you don't really need to do because it'll do that behind the scenes on the bus anyway, but just for visual demonstration purposes. And the second channel has a gate output as well, which I'll send to this ADSR envelope generator. So you can see the two mutually exclusive ADSR envelope generators here. Then what we can do is we can take both of their outputs and send them to a linear mixer, which mixes them together, although we're not actually going to be playing them both at the same time, but we need to find some way of just adding them to each other. It doesn't really matter for our purposes that they're not playing at the same time, it doesn't make a difference to this. Then we take the output of that, and that goes into the CV input of the VCA. Now I've got two VCAs here, so that the first one can be further altered by the velocity, which we're not using in this particular patch, but that's a nice thing that you can do. Although it would be made a bit more complex in this one, as the velocity of the closed hi-hat would actually be controlling the open hi-hat, so maybe, yeah, this isn't the best patch after all. But anyway, for non-velocity sensitive hi-hats, it's really quite nice. So we can then take some white noise and send it through to that as well. That's good, we can hear that's working. To make it a bit nicer, we can send the hi-hat instead to a filter and send the filter to the VCA. And from this point, it's mostly just a case of noodling around with the ADSR envelope generators. The attacks should both be at their minimum, sustain at minimum and release at minimum to keep them mutually exclusive. And then you just adjust the two decays to taste. So this is the open one, so we want that to be fairly long. And this is the closed one. No, I've got that the wrong way around. This is the open one. which is quite a nice hi-hat sound. And if you want to change the timbre dynamically, you can, for instance, noodle around with the cutoff point of the filter, and it's affecting both of them at once. So with the caveat that it's not a velocity sensitive patch, it is an open and closed hi-hat patch in one single, albeit fairly elaborate patch. So you can noodle it as one single cohesive whole. Generally, the more parts you want to record at once, the more modules it takes, which is why I generally try and only record one part at a time, because even with all of these modules, it makes for one really good monophonic monotimbral synthesizer, or not really that good at all multi-timbral or polyphonic synthesizer. So for the purposes of hi-hats, which are very closely rhythmically linked and affect each other, I kind of, to a certain extent, kind of had to record both at once, and even then it's using up quite a few modules. So although it's a simple patch for what it is, both hi-hats at once, most patches will be much simpler just on account of them only being a single part being recorded at a time. But anyway, that's a fairly sensible modular hi-hat patch. So, you know, if you're into modular synthesis, be it on hardware or software of any kind, that's a rough guide to how you can patch your hi-hats. I'm Zoe Blade, and thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, subscribe, and do all of those things. I've got a Patreon at patreon.com/ZoeBladeMusic. If you like this sort of thing, please, you know, feel free to kind of tip me $1 a month. It helps me make these things, and music, which I also make at zoeblade.com. So thanks again. Bye.